Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC. And we have four happy participants this week. Pretty big win on the road, fellas. And we have just an enormous game Saturday to talk about. Probably the biggest USC game in some years. Okay, no reason to waste time. The people who watch this show know who this group is. I'm not going to introduce you. You guys aren't that interesting. But we do have some interesting stuff to talk about. Let's talk about that Iowa game. Let's start with the superlatives because we're going to have some concerns, I'm sure, but I want to get this out of the way. I don't have a question. I have a two-word statement. Makai Lemon. Mark, go.
Yeah, maybe the best wide receiver to come through USC in what, 2 years. He is just amazing. Doesn't matter what the route is, doesn't matter if the throw is good or bad. 9.9 times out of 10, Makai Lemon is going to make that catch and make that play that you need. I mean, when he went across the middle and sacrificed his body going up for that ball, huge. I mean, that was amazing. It's the impact that he has, just not when he makes plays. It tells the other players around him, I'm doing this. Show me what you can do. It's that trickle up effect, I guess, maybe. You make other players better by playing your best. You don't have to be the most vocal person. And Makai Lemon isn't the most outspoken guy, at least when he speaks with the media. But on the field, you hear him loud and clear. I'd hate to think about where this team would be this year without Makai Lemon out on the field. Everybody's playing hurt. You don't know if he's hurt or not. He just keeps going and going and going. He's that Energizer Bunny. By far, USC's MVP on offense this year.
Greg, we talked early in the year about how Makai Lemon was sort of on the cusp of entering that all-time elite group of USC wide receivers, right? The table that Keyshawn and Lynn Swann and Mike Williams and these guys sit at. Is he now there?
Well, I think he's really getting close to being within a conversation of it. I think the thing with Lemon was when he came to SC, all the talk was centered on Robinson and Branch, and he kind of got lost in the shuffle. I had seen him play, and others who had seen him play more than I did were all saying this guy is absolutely incredibly good. He reminds me of now when you talk about two words, he reminds me of Puka Nacua, who plays for the Rams, size, the whole thing. And I think that by the end, the problem is if he came back for his senior year, which he's obviously not going to do, he would be so nationally known from this year that, he would have probably gotten some Heisman questions about it. Not saying he'd win the Heisman, but certainly a person that you would put in a conversation as being the best player. I think that it's taken him a number of games, even though he's had tremendous games and they've been on TV. It seems like maybe because of the importance of the games now, he's really going to be able to up his thing. I think, and I'm a little bit, of course, one-sided here. I think that he's going to win the Biletnikoff Award. And I think the fact that he does will obviously energize a lot of things in the USC football program and recruiting wide receivers, yada, yada, yada. If SC has a big game up at Oregon and he has a big game, he's going to be an All-American, I think, somewhere. I'd like to see it. He deserves it. I've watched some of the other guys that he's competing against, so to speak, and they're good, but this guy is really good.
Yeah, I don't know if he has the Biletnikoff wrapped up, but if he has a big game Saturday, I think you can all but give it to him.
Why do you think he doesn't?
Well, I think he's got I don't know that he's had enough big stages to perform on yet. But if he shows up big against Oregon, and look, I have some question marks about that game. Makai Lemon isn't one of them. He's going to show up. Then I think he probably locks that down. And I think he's a first or second team All-American no matter what happens Saturday. Mark, or Eric, What is it that makes this guy special? Yeah, anybody can look at the numbers, but if somebody hadn't seen him play, what makes this guy so good?
You hear people talk about certain players, they have that dog in them, right? I mean, that's ultimately where it starts. Like Mackay wants to be playing hard and physical at all times. And that's not a trait that all wide receivers have. It's not a trait all football players have. And so he's a handful for every defensive back, for every defense, because if you're not going 100% on, I mean, 100+% on every play, he's going to eat you up. And even when you are going 100%, he's still probably going to make a catch. So, I mean, that's where it starts. And then that goes all the way back to how did he prep for this in high school? How does he prep for the game in the off season, right? Or the season in the off season? How does he prep for the game during the week? It's just full go. I thought it was interesting that Lincoln Riley this week talked about how he's actually taken more of a vocal leader role of late, and that doesn't come naturally to him because Mackay's always been a guy where it's just like I'm gonna do my work, not in a selfish, I don't care about the team, that sort of thing, but like you do what you show up with whatever effort you want. I'm here to work and I'm going to put everything I have into this. And so for now, that to bleed over a little bit into bringing the team along, I think makes it kind of a special year for him. But that's where it starts. There's no plays off. There's no plays off. So he is always on the verge of making a play on every single snap. And that's tough to defend against.
Yeah, last year when Jeremiah Smith was having that monstrous year for Ohio State as a true freshman, you look at him and say, that guy he has the body of an NFL starter right now as a true freshman. Mackay has plenty of physical gifts, but that's not who he is. He's not particularly tall. He's fast, but he's not going to run a 4.3 at the combine. That's not what this guy though does. Everything. He's a football player, and sometimes you can look at height, weight, 40 time, and that tells you maybe what a guy's ceiling is. But with Mackay, he does so many things right. He's a fantastic route runner. He has great hands. He's tough. He's good after the catch. For a guy who's not very tall, he is superb at making the 50-50 balls. 50-50 balls to Mackay Lemon are 85-15 balls. And this is a guy who at this point he's not just a technician who works his butt off. He's also a guy who really understands everything that's going on around him. And I mentioned in my article this past week, but that play near the end of the game where Iowa essentially tackled Jacoby Lane and they got a critical 15-yard penalty. I was at home in Dallas, so I was watching the game on TV, and I remember watching, one of the freshman wide receivers run onto the field, and he never got inside the numbers from the sideline. And so I thought, oh, no, this is a disaster. Somebody needs to let him know. And Mackay sees it immediately, gets his attention, signals for him to come to him, and then stops him and pushes him back out once he got to the spot. This is a guy who's, he has his own problems at that point, right? He's trying to read the defense. He's trying to make sure that he assesses what he needs to do, making sure he's on the same page with Jade Mayava. And despite that, he still notices a kid outside of him is about to get a 5-yard penalty and fixes it. Mackay Lemon is just an extraordinary football player. And Greg's right. He hasn't had enough time to put up the all-time career numbers that some of USC's other receivers have had. But I think when it comes to just single seasons, his is going to be up there with Keyshawn, with Marquise Lee, with Mike Williams' freshman season as some of the all-time great single season performances by USC wide receiver. It's special to watch. Now let's talk about another guy. We're still on the superlatives. Guys, we talked before this season. There were some major concerns that we had. One of those was Jaden Mayava. We knew Jaden was big. We knew he had a good arm. We knew he could make throws. What we didn't know is how consistent will this guy be, and when things get hard, is he going to make the big throw? Look. Jaden seems to have answered the bell here, right? I mean, this is a guy who he's had some, he had a string of throwing at least a pick in 5 straight games, and some of those weren't very good. But it's also the case that he is consistently making big throws, consistently moving the team down the field. And his performance Saturday, while it was not statistically the best you'll ever see from him, I think it might be the best he's ever played. On a wet field with a wet ball, and he's dropping balls into very tight spots against a really good Iowa defense. I just thought he was extraordinary. And I no longer worry about Jade Mailava, right? When you going into this game at Oregon, I know it's a tough place to play. We'll get to that, but I still look at it and say, all right, what are the pluses this week? And Jade Mailava is one of the big pluses this week. This is a guy who can play. Greg, I know you had some concerns before the season about Mailava. I think we all did. Are you with me? Are you on the Jade Mailava bandwagon? Are you still holding out? Are you still being grumpy?
Well, I wouldn't call it grumpy.
I know you wouldn't.
My realistic. I mean, I can't be phony. That's not what I'm all about. But I'll say this: up to this point in the season, I would agree with everything you've said. Quarterbacks are going to throw interceptions. If you throw the ball enough times, they're going to happen. And sometimes they happen in the ways you thought they were going to happen, and sometimes it's unfortunate circumstances. But I will say this, and he's going to get the ultimate test on Saturday against Oregon, the biggest game that he's probably ever played in, no doubt about it. In one of the more challenging, and I think that's really being kind, places to play a football game at the collegiate level. I've been there enough times that I know what it's like, and this is going to be the real test. If he gets through this one in such a way that you just go, wow, he really hit the pinnacle here, then you know what? My hat's off to him. And even if he doesn't have a great game or whatever, he's still accomplished a lot this season, I think. And it's not easy to go into Autzen Stadium and all of a sudden, put on an All-America performance. Although I will say this, I was there in 2011 when SC upset Oregon, and Barkley had I think it was Barkley, had a tremendous game, and so did SC, and came out with a tight, I think it was 38-35 victory over the Ducks. That was, I think, one of the best games I've seen an SC team play.
Yeah. Mark, thoughts on Jade Mailava?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on all the major points. I disagree with you as far as maybe not his best game statistically. I mean, I'm looking at it, and he only had 1 touchdown, Chris, but he was 23 of 32 for 250 yards, and I don't know, that's 77% completion rating in my book.
Yeah, good game, no question.
Pretty good day. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. The biggest question mark about Jaden going into the season, decision making, was he going to be able to, in his own words, stay in neutral, not let one play affect the next type of thing. And I would say for the most part, he's accomplished that. You take away that 5-game stretch where he threw an interception. He's really played solid football for USC because he's not trying to be the man. He's just letting everybody else be the man for him by using his tools. I remember when Steve Sarkisian was the coach and Cody Kessler was the quarterback, and Cody had this ability to have a great completion percentage by just checking down, taking the for sure pass. It got to a point where everybody in the stadium and the opposing defenses knew what was going to happen, where Sark had to call him out and say, hey, trust your receivers, let them make a play. And Jaden allows his teammates to make plays for him. When you've got a Makai Lemon, when you've got a Jacoby Lane, when you have your running backs, no matter who it really is, that you can depend on, that's going to make Jade Mailava's game that much better. And it really took off these last, 3 or 4 games when you decided to, hey, when there's a read, I'm allowed to hold on to the ball and keep it and run. Because that's really been, I think, the biggest difference in USC's offensive execution this year is when When Jaden makes that right decision, everything works, including playing behind a makeshift offensive line every single game. I don't think people take that into consideration, how much of an effect that can have. I mean, especially when you're, playing musical chairs with the center position. So all that taken into consideration, Jaden has definitely played an A game all season long. I mean, he would have a great report card to bring home to mom and dad.
Eric, I've got a tougher question for you. Jaden is obviously eligible to go to the NFL draft this year if he wants to. USC, like every major program, has a big time guy on the bench after him. I don't think we know what Jaden is going to do. I mean, I don't know how we would at this point. I guess my question for you, though, is what is this guy's ceiling? If he decides to come back for another year, is this a guy who is going to be one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the country and a Heisman candidate? Is he going to what I'll call complete the Carson Palmer turnaround, where you go from being a guy who you can't really trust not to turn the ball over to a guy who can step in and dominate in the toughest fields in America? Is that who he is? I mean, is there more to see from him if he decides to be at USC another year?
If he finishes the year close to what he's done so far, right? Take all his averages and give him that for the next few games. He's a top 2 Heisman guy coming into the season, all off season, all that sort of stuff. He's up there, top 2, top 3 in all those lists. Absolutely. The question for what does next season look like? And, I know we got games this season, but the question there is the wide receivers, right? Like it's not like the wide receivers are bailing him out constantly. And you want to talk about this Iowa game, like Makai Lemon made some unbelievable catches. Those balls are handed to him 25, 30 yards downfield in the only spot that they could go where it's a clear throw away from the defender to where the wide receiver catches it. Now, there's probably one wide receiver in the country that makes all of those catches in that one game. But his ability to kind of throw guys open and put the ball where it needs to be is incredible. So yes, he is that. The idea that it would be sort of a cakewalk to it and all the numbers would just up next year. The wide receiver position is going to be very interesting for how USC fills that with guys behind almost certainly Makai, very probably Jacoby Lane, where you're looking at like career receptions and it's whatever Tanuk Hines does the rest of the season for USC receivers. So that's where Jaden coming back would be huge for that group, because then you got a leader and a guy who's been there and seen it and done it and all that sort of stuff. But absolutely. In this year where you were kind of trying to pick, does Arch Manning make a jump? Is Cade Klubnik the guy? Like there were so many off-season, is this the quarterback? Whoever ends up at Ohio State, whoever ends up at Alabama, like you had a lot of question mark this school quarterback as a potential Heisman guy. He would dominate a lot of the offseason talk there.
Yeah. Chris, you made an interesting analogy there with the whole Carson Palmer thing and how after that 2002 season, we're not talking Jaden Mayaba winning the Heisman, but I just remember after that Orange Bowl win, we're just getting started, and it was just a Carson Palmer handing off the baton to Matt Leinart, who had never thrown a pass yet. And yeah, it was the receivers that Eric just brought up that maybe helped the next quarterback out. USC's got a couple of guys returning. Zacharias Williams will be there. That could be a nice target to go with Tanuk Hines. Prince Strawn, maybe. And then you got the guys who are coming in. So maybe it's not as dire as you're making it out to be, or hopefully we're not looking forward to next year.
No, yeah. I don't think dire. I think there's not a Makai Lemon. I mean, the number of catches that he's right, but that's the thing that really good wide receivers can do. They can make quarterbacks look amazing.
Yeah, I think Tanuk Hines has a little bit of Makai Lemon in him, and hopefully we'll get to see that as a sophomore next year.
There's a good chance I won't be in the room when Jaden Mayaba and Lincoln Riley are talking about his future at the end of this season, or whether he goes to the NFL or comes back. But I would be stunned if there's not a conversation that day, if Maeva is trying to figure out which way to go about, okay, who are you going to go find in the transfer portal for me at that position? And we'll have plenty of time to talk about transfer portal some weeks from now, but that's almost certainly going to happen. And with Jaden Maeva coming back, that would be a pretty attractive spot for an elite wide receiver. And let's give some credit to Lincoln Riley here, because there's some things still there's some major concerns I have about Lincoln Riley. We're going to get to them. But Lincoln Riley is the guy who looked at Jaden Maeva, raw and rough as he was, and said, "That's my guy. I think, right? I'm gonna bench Miller Moss. I'm not going to go into the transfer portal. That's my guy. He's going to be good." And yeah, and he's good. And Lincoln Riley, once again, is showing that, if nothing else, he is an elite developer and evaluator of quarterbacks. He just is. And the jump that Maeva made from last year, and the jump that I suspect he would make if he came back next year, is at least partly attributable to the fact that Lincoln Riley really knows what he's doing when it comes to quarterback play. He just does. And so he should get applauded for that. Okay. We've talked over and over again about how the offensive line is just getting devastated by injuries on a weekly basis. Once again, USC loses probably their best offensive lineman. You might remove probably from that, although it's hard to know because Elijah Page isn't in the game very often these days. I mean, he just hasn't played very much. So very early on, Elijah Page goes out, which means you're shuffling Tobias Raymond around. You're bringing in an undersized walk-on at guard. And once again, it wasn't perfect, right? The pass protection was spotty at times. The running game wasn't dominant. But once again, the offensive line gives USC a chance to win, despite the fact that they're playing in pretty lousy conditions. They're playing against a team that the one thing you can say about this Iowa team is they are good and tough and sound defensively, right? I mean, these guys held Indiana to 20. They held Oregon to 18. That is a good defense. It's been tested by some of the best teams in the country. The O-line figured out a way to get it done. Again, credit to Lincoln Riley, credit to Zach Hansen. I mean, that they've done a spectacular job. And those guys, especially guys like Tobias Raymond, who, probably doesn't know where he's going to play until he shows up on Saturday and sees what happens. Mark, I want to start, though, with one of the other guys, Kalon Miller. His brother has become something of a folk hero, and for good reason. But Kalon Miller comes in the game, redshirt freshman, not the biggest O-lineman on that team. And it seems like every time he's in there, he plays really, really well, right? I mean, this guy's good.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that maybe USC's two, I don't want to say best offensive linemen, but two of their most productive offensive linemen and somebody that you can rely on are walk-ons. Well, one used to be a walk-on, Keelan O'Connor at center, and now you got Kalon Miller playing either left guard, right guard. He is also a backup center for USC if they need him. The dude is just technically sound. He's a football player. He's not all about flash. He's not all about, that the NIL. And part of that is, how you're brought up. You come from a good house. They teach you the right things. The value of work, the value of having a good work ethic. And then you add that into being a smart player. You look at where they went to high school, who coached them. You bring them in, and all of a sudden you got something to work with. You got this really cool ball of clay, and you say, Zach Hansen, go do something with this. And all of a sudden this is the result. King Miller does it at running back. His brother does it playing on the offensive line. And when you have a player like that you can just kind of plug and play, and he's jumping over scholarship players who came in with him in that same class, I mean, that's a testament. And you can spread the praise around to the player, to the coaching, to how he was brought up, everything. Kalon Miller. USC is going to have to pay to keep him on the roster next year because he's earned a scholarship here. I have to imagine there's immediate playing time somewhere else around the country if they're doing their homework.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Greg, Lincoln Riley has a scheme that that gives his guys a chance to succeed in the running game, right? He has a way of finding numbers and giving his guys an advantage, and that helps. And obviously the players get credit for going out and performing, but I'm blown away by what we've seen from Zach Hansen this year, right? I'm blown away by it. I mean, I don't know that anybody's had a more difficult job as an assistant coach at a major program than this guy. You had an offensive line that if you just looked at the roster, you say, I don't know. I mean, there's some pieces, but I don't know. And if you have any injuries at all, you're in trouble. And it hasn't been just some injuries. It's been brutal every single week. Lincoln Riley made a heck of a hire when he took that guy and said, he's my new O-line coach, right? I mean, he's done an extraordinary job.
I think the work speaks for itself. The players believe in him. They like him. Physically, he's really big. At 6'6" or whatever he is. I've seen him, obviously up close, and there's everything about him that makes you say, this guy's pretty good. And I will say this, I feel very fortunate to have been through the era of Hudson Houck when he was here, and he is a legend at the NFL level, at the USC level, and we just hit it off. He was recruited when I was at Edison High School in Huntington Beach back in the late 70s, early 80s, and when he was still at SC. And, sometimes you just hit it off with people, and, he would tell me to come up and watch, and he would have me come stand right next to him when he's coaching the offensive line, and he had all those future, all pros and everything there. I got to see the best work, how he taught, how he decided. I mean, one of the great lines with Hudson Houck was, if you don't know how to do this or that and it's not working, just go out there and beat the living crap out of the guy, no matter what it takes. And that was the attitude. And they obviously had the ability to do that. And I see in Hansen here that he has the ability to get players to play fundamentally sound for the most part. And he gets them to the old stupid saying, they're playing at 110%. But he gets them to play all out and together. And I said weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks ago that they don't have to have 5 NFL prospects on that offensive line. It's how they play as a team together. And when we talk about, here comes Miller, here comes another guy, they're switching positions. He's taught them how to do that, and they bought into doing that. And I think it's just a real credit to him. It's a credit to Lincoln Riley for hiring him and understanding it. If SC can move offensively and hold their own against a really good defense by Oregon, this guy, Hansen, is going to get a lot of publicity, and he is really entitled to it.
Yeah. Yeah, Eric, so for years, USC was in a position where they simply weren't recruiting enough offensive linemen. They weren't recruiting enough good offensive linemen. And it seems like, with a couple of exceptions, almost that entire period from Pete Carroll leaving to this year has been a stream of average or below average or sometimes awful offensive lines. You look at Zach Hansen, you look at the guys he has who, I mean, you could have 4 or 5 returning starters next year. You had a pretty fantastic recruiting class last year. You have a fantastic recruiting class this year, to the point where Greg said you don't have to have 5 NFL prospects along the line, and he's right. But in the next couple of years, you are going to have 5 NFL prospects across the line. I mean, when you look in the future of this offensive line, it looks pretty bright at this point, and in a way that it hasn't since the early 2000s, I think.
It's college football now right, is different than college football then. So when you're looking at, oh, what does our roster look like in 6 months, let alone like 2 years, 3 years down the road, it doesn't look like it just doesn't. It just does. Whatever program you are, that's not saying, oh, these guys are all going to leave or USC can't do this and that. It just changes. The thing is, you have to have enough pieces at all times to put a puzzle together and be strong there. And so that's where USC is right now on the offensive line. It's not, you don't get the feeling anymore. Emmanuel Perrin left, right? And that's a topic for this week for sure. And you just thought that's it. That was the one piece that you had on the offensive line that you really knew was going to be good this year. And now what they've done, again, what you're talking about, what they've done in putting this together has been unbelievably impressive. And I don't think, now spinning it forward this offseason, talking about the future of the line, I don't think there's a guy where you're going, oh my gosh, if that guy leaves, this thing's coming down. Like it's just a hole next year. And that's a great spot to be in. And like you mentioned, right, that 2017 class that played into 22, Lincoln Riley's first year, that's a good group. There was Austin Jackson and Elijah Vera Tucker in there. And so they've had some guys, but yeah, you're starting to see Hayden Treater come in a little bit. You got flashes of Elijah Vicona. Like there's some young guys that are coming up. Kalen Miller, just a redshirt freshman. The 26 class, unbelievable. And so Aaron Dunn and Alex Payne, guys you haven't really heard a lot about. But yeah, the way they've built that offensive line. And again, if you're building a program, hey, where do you want to start? Offensive line, defensive line is where it's got to be. And so now you're starting to hear a lot of names in those two groups. And so, yeah, in terms of the offensive line, I think looking forward, again, are every single one of those names going to be on the roster in a year or 2 years? No, but it feels like there's a lot of confidence right now. They're going to put together a solid offensive line every year.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Mark, you and I, we thought Aaron Dunn was actually playing against Iowa the way he was warming up. First guy out there, I mean, well before everybody else. And
Working hard.
I'm sorry?
Working hard.
Exactly. I mean, he was really focused on that footwork technique. And we're thinking, all right, well, maybe he's playing today. And then all of a sudden throughout the game, you hear 68 wearing jersey number 95, talking about Hayden Trader getting in, being part of that jumbo package. So, yeah, they're starting to work those guys in now, whether they're playing or not. The future is bright on the offensive line.
All right, guys, let's flip it over to the other side. This is going to be an interesting conversation. Maybe one of my favorite novels, Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. That's the opening line.
So we're done with the superlatives, Chris? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're not. We're half done with the superlatives in the sense that there are some superlatives coming up. There's also some gnashing of teeth and moaning and belly aching coming up. Look, I don't know whether to cheer the resiliency and the fight of this team or be horrified by how long it takes that defense to frickin' show up on Saturdays. Everybody has games where they just don't come quite ready to play. It happens to everybody, right? I've seen it happen to Nick Saban. Plenty of times I saw it happen to Pete Carroll. I think one of Pete Carroll's 2 or 3 best teams ever had a horrific first half in Corvallis, and it cost them the national title. This happens sometimes, even to the very best coaches and even to really good players. But for crying out loud, every single week, the front seven is going to go out there and for at least a quarter, if not a half, just get pushed all over the field like it's the varsity playing against the JV defense. That's what this program has become. Greg, if I don't turn to you now, I'm going to go off on a lengthy rant. So I'm just going to stop and I'm going to ask you, what in the world is going on?
Well, I think it's the personality makeup of each player. You know, some guys, they come to play the minute the ball is whistled up. Other guys, they have to, quote, get into it. I would say that this game coming up, not to go far ahead because I know you're going to get there, but this game is going to show what a player is all about in terms of effort, focus, strength, ability to from the minute the ball is snapped, every play is 110%. And if you can't do that, then it's really it's sometimes it's really not the coach, it's the players. Although at college level, you can say, well, you recruited him, didn't you know when you recruited him he had an inconsistent attitude? But I think that at this point of the season, what I like about this point of the season is we're at the end of it. We're really at the end of it. And if you don't know who the players are now to play in big games and how much they should play, I suspect you'll never know. And I would say against Oregon, we're going to find out once and for all who they really put their trust in for how long, and does the player play, what they want them to do. Making seven guys happy is not the way to go. Playing to win and get in the championship or get into the playoffs is the ultimate goal at this point. And we're going to find out how much these guys really want to do it. It's up to the coaches to play the guys that will come ready to play in this game. I think the Iowa game kind of set the table for this game, basically saying, let's find out how they're going to be. Now, I think the point that you're making, and correct me if I'm wrong, in the first half of Iowa, you said, are they even going to pressure anything? Are they going to get off blocks? Or what are they going to do? And then the second half, it was like a different team, which means it's about effort. It's about focus. How do you get that for all four quarters? They're going to need that on Saturday.
Yeah, Eric, there were times when Pete Carroll's defenses would come out and they would just show up in their base front, and teams would have some success. Sometimes teams would drive down and score on the first series of the game, like Oklahoma did in that Orange Bowl game. But it happened, that wasn't unusual for Pete. And then once he and Pete, who is a defensive genius, once he figures out what they're doing and how they're attacking, he makes adjustments, and then things just stop. They just stop working. That's not really what we're seeing here, right? And the USC coaches have been very clear that it wasn't really a scheme thing. We didn't change all that much. In the first half of Iowa, in at least the first quarter against Northwestern, in the entire game against Notre Dame, the entire game against Illinois, in the first couple of drives against Nebraska, I saw guys who didn't have any fight up front, right? I mean, you're talking about guys. I saw Devin Tompkins at least twice against Iowa get pushed 8 or 9 yards back. I've seen the same thing from Keyshawn Silver, not only against Iowa, but in other weeks. Keyshawn Silver is at USC because he's a big guy who's supposed to be able to control the A-gap. That's his only job. Nobody expects him to get a bunch of sacks. Nobody expects him to chase down quarterbacks from behind with his 4.6 speed. His job is to not get moved. And I've seen him get pushed 6, 8, 10 yards. It's infuriating. I'll be honest. It's infuriating. It is completely unacceptable for those guys on the interior to get pushed around like that for a quarter or a half every single week. It's just not acceptable. And I don't understand it. Eric, I need you to help me understand it. Can you please tell me why it is that a guy like Devin Tompkins, who the coaches couldn't stop gushing about in the offseason, is content for an entire half in the biggest game of the year on national television to get his butt thoroughly kicked almost every down? Can you explain that to me? Because I don't get it.
No, Lincoln Riley's, he's not going to pile on. I mean, I've said this before. He's not going to stand in front of the media on Trojans Live after the game, whatever, and go, we need more from this one guy, and go over and over. So when he says again early this week, like, we need to play more physical, we need to be stronger, we need to do all that, like, that's a telling statement that you didn't show up. You didn't show up and you didn't try to be physical against them. And I don't know if it's right? A lot of times you look at it, you go, you're too high. You're too high against a double team, especially, and they are carrying you 8 and 9 yards downfield and dumping you on the ground. And so is that, I'm trying to make a tackle against a double team and not just staying here, right? And not letting it move me. I don't know what the thought process is on some of this stuff, but yes, every time, not every time, there are too many times that there's a run where you look and you go, yeah, there's a defensive tackle 7, 8 yards downfield. And then, did the linebacker make a great play on that? No, he got walled off, but he's getting blocked by his own defensive tackle. Like that's not a play that a lot of those guys are going to be able to make. I think the look for me that's interesting that we're seeing, and clearly the one that Dan Lynn thinks is, I don't know if he thinks it's his best run stopping look, but he certainly is going to it. That one where the tackles are split wide, where the two linebackers, Jaden Walker and Desmond Stevens, are in the A gap, just a little bit behind the defensive lineman. And then again, Eric Gentry is sort of playing this soccer sweeper role. USC went to that on the very first play of the second half, right? And if you're saying, hey, we got to figure something out, we got to stop the run, we got to do something, you're going to, whatever you put out there first feels like it's telling to me, hey, this is what we're going to go with. They ran that on the first down of Iowa's opening drive of the second half. They ran it on the second first down. The third first down, they went 5 defensive linemen, and Iowa hit it for like 12 yards, a run up the middle. Next first down, back to that same look. So that feels like something where it's just, because defensive linemen, they're not getting doubled with that look. They're not getting doubled. It's not a center guard combo block on anybody. And so if the feeling is we can't trust our defensive tackles to hold up against a double, which, by the way, Oregon is going to make you do, then that's our look, and we can get one-on-one blocks, and then maybe we can get off something and make a tackle. That's what it felt like from me. And then on that final drive, you're seeing some of that too. By the way, Jakeem Stewart in quite a bit on the final Iowa drive. But that's a question. Can the defensive tackles show up and let you play that 4-down look, or I mean even 5 linemen? But at this point, you're not getting enough consistency from that group, and you're basically asking your very young middle linebackers, hey, we need you to take on centers and guards, right at the line of scrimmage so that we can try to make a tackle somewhere on a run play.
Yeah, USC went to that look a lot against Northwestern, and that slowed them down too. Mark, look, the linebackers on this roster have a hard enough time stopping the run without having a 330-pound defensive tackle being pushed into their lap. And I got to say, I know Devin Tompkins he's probably a defensive end more than a defensive tackle, realistically. But he's still, he's 290-something pounds. I mean, he's a big dude. I'm starting to wonder why Jakeem Stewart isn't getting more reps. It's one that I know they talk about. Dan Lynn talks all the time about, well, we got to see enough that we can trust you. Okay, that's fine. But when your older guys are not playing the first or second quarters of every game, I don't know what we're waiting for to trust Jakeem Stewart. I mean, one thing you can't do if you're a defensive tackle is get driven back 8 yards. And you know what? I never saw that happen to Mike Patterson or Cedric Ellis or Leonard Williams or Sean Cody. Never, not once. Maybe you can go scour the film, people out there in cyberspace, and you can show me a clip, but I don't think you can. You cannot do that. It destroys everything defensively if you let that happen. And it's happening way too often. I mean, at some point, don't you just say, look, I don't want to have to play true freshmen. I don't want to have to play redshirt freshmen who've been hurt all the time. But Jakeem Stewart, Carlin Jones, are you guys willing to go in there and give me an effort early in the game? Because I'm not getting that from my older guys. Isn't that where we are?
Yes, and you forgot Floyd Boucard as well.
If he's healthy again, yes.
So, and that's my point. When we talk about these guys, these younger guys, and Eric, you touched on it a little bit, and Chris, you touched on it. Devin Tompkins is a defensive end. The guys we're talking about, Jakeem Stewart, Floyd Boucard, Carlon Jones, they've got some junk in their trunk. You need that lower body mass that can kind of anchor in, get those feet planted, and they'll bend with the wind as a strong tree, but they're not going to be uprooted. And that's what we're seeing, especially to start the game. I've been taking a lot of blowback because, I question, why is this happening week after week after week? And I said, I asked Coach Riley, you like the end result, you got the win, you like how they played in the second half, but why does it take 30 minutes for these guys to figure it out? It's almost like you're watching Muhammad Ali playing rope-a-dope. It's like, oh, go ahead, take your punches, wear yourselves out, and then we're going to be the stronger team in the second half. And that's fine. You want to be the stronger team in the second half. It's how you finish, not how you start. But still, why are you putting yourself in that hole? Why are you making it so much more difficult on yourself? So I agree with you, Chris. We're at the point now that, what? Let's put, finger quotes here, the backups in to send a message to the veteran players who should be starting. This is the energy, this is the effort I need. And if you're not going to get it, if you're not going to give it to me, these guys are going to play ahead of you.
Again, I think it's telling. Final drive, Jakeem Stewart is in almost the entire thing. Devin Tompkins takes a snap at defensive end on Iowa's the big long one. So yeah, clearly there's some look at who do we need here, but it's also, one of those things with the defensive line, right? Oh, we roll guys in and we have waves of guys coming in and all that stuff. But yeah, I like to, I think it's telling we have to have a stop, right? That last drive, the coaches have to get a stop. I was going to try to march, take as much time off that clock as possible. I thought it was interesting who was in on that drive for USC.
And that goes back to what I've been saying throughout the year, and I know some of you disagree. I think we have the same problem at the linebacker position. If you're going to play in this conference against a run-heavy type of offensive philosophy that the Iowas are going to roll at you, Nebraska and Michigan, Northwestern, you need to have linebackers that are a little bigger up top that can take on those guards when they're coming at you. I just think USC is too undersized at linebacker. And I know, Eric, you always point at me and say, no, look at these guys. Look at they're 6'2", 230, and that's what you see across the board. I still think they need to be bigger. Especially at middle linebacker. You need that thumper type of guy.
I'd love to have Chris Claiborne there. I think we're all in agreement on that. But I will say that if you gave me a 217-pound Matt Grudegood, he'd be playing downhill.
But what defensive line's in front of him? But what defensive line was in front of him?
That's all fair. I'm just saying that we may very well need bigger linebackers, but what we also need linebackers who are willing to play downhill. And every once in a while, that will happen. But there are long stretches where it just doesn't happen. And it is, we're going to talk about Oregon's running game in a minute. I don't want to, we're going to do it. But before we get there, Greg.
Yes, sir.
As frustrating as it is to watch guys go out and simply not be ready to play for a quarter or two every week, it's also pretty remarkable that this group of players finds themselves in these situations, these difficult situations, mostly because they put themselves there, but they also have the self-belief to rally and play like a completely different group of guys in the second half of these football games. That's almost as extraordinary as the first half collapses. Maybe it is as extraordinary as the first half collapses. So that's why I say best of times, worst of times. Greg, in the second half, that team really showed up to play, and against a physical group who almost never lets people come back from a big deficit. They went and punched them in the face over and over again for 30 minutes.
Well, I tell you what it tells me is they're focused. They want to do it. It's it's the old saying, why did you play as well as you did? Because I wanted to. And that I'm not saying they don't play hard in the first half, but I don't think they're as focused. And I'm going to tell you, this is again, I think of this about how they play many players on the defensive line. I think this idea of losing players, in the portal, the slightest little thing, and someone goes, "Okay, I'm not going to play here." I think a lot of times this is just my opinion. I could be totally wrong. That a lot of guys get a little extra effort to be able to get in there because they don't want to have the player start thinking about, okay, I'm not happy, I'm not playing enough, and they've played everyone through 10 games basically to keep everybody involved. But what I like about this game coming up, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it, is this is it. There's nothing to, like I expect Mayava to run more than maybe he's ever run in a game because you're not saving him for anything. Okay. You got to win, whatever it takes. We're not worried that, he won't be available, for the next 5 games if he gets hurt. The next 5 games don't mean anything. It's what's going to happen in this game. And to me, this is the game. And I tell you, I'm really glad you mentioned, Stewart and the other player you mentioned. I'm trying to remember.
Harlan Jones.
Yeah. You know what? These guys, I've been waiting to play and play and play even more and more and more. And because they deserve it. They make a difference. I mean, even a 1-play interception is a big difference in changing a game, like we saw against Iowa. And my thing is, what are we waiting for? Now, obviously, we're not at practice, and no one wants to hear me bitch about that again, but when you go to practice, you do see these things. You see players' attitudes and what they do, and then it transfers into a game. And I'll just shut up here, but they can't do that against Oregon. They can't. They have to go with the guys that bring it. And if somebody gets upset, winning will offset guys really getting upset. At this point in the season, there's only 2 regular season games left, and I think it's pretty safe to say that SC will not be in the Big Ten championship game, but they don't have to be if they can, pull it out against Oregon. I think if they beat Oregon, they're going to the playoffs. I have no doubt about it.
Yeah, Greg, you made an interesting comment about defensive linemen who one little thing and decide we're not going to play here anymore. That would be a fantastic transition to this Oregon game, but for reasons we'll talk about. But it's a little bit too early because I want to wrap up Iowa real quick. And I just want to say this, that seemed, going into that game, that seemed like it was a critical game, a Michigan-level game that USC just had to win. USC has to get back to winning all of their games in the Coliseum, for one. And 2, they have to be able to show that they can play with the bullies. Everybody knows USC has more skill talent than Iowa. They have a fancy coach with with a bunch of replica Heismans in his office from all the guys he's coached. Everybody knows that stuff. The question with USC is, can they stand toe-to-toe with the bully and beat him at his own game? That's the question. And in the first half, they couldn't. In the second half, they did. And they did it against a coach who had, for no apparent reason that I can discern, gone out of his way a couple of years ago to talk about USC and their lack of physicality and not being committed to defense, right? Kirk Ferentz ran his stupid mouth without any reason a couple of years ago. And then he got to stand there in the rain and watch his big bullies that he's so proud of get their butts kicked for 30 minutes. Gosh, that's sweet. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed that. You know what, Kirk? Screw you. I mean, really. It's not like somebody said, "Hey, Kirk, can you tell us what you think of Lincoln Riley's coaching philosophy?" Now, if they had asked him that, any halfway respectable coach would say, "No, I'm not going to talk about that. It makes no sense." But they didn't even ask him that. He went out of his way to mock USC and their lack of physicality. And then he comes out and he starts to get proven right for 30 minutes. And then for the last 30 minutes, his guys got beat down. They got beat down. 19 straight points. They couldn't move the ball. They couldn't stop anybody. They got their butts kicked. Kirk, it's what you deserve. Iowa, what you deserve. And Iowa fans, who are some of the worst fans this side of Oregon, it's what you guys deserve too. Go home. Leave us alone. Go play in whatever crap bowl game you get.
You talked about Michigan being must win, Iowa must win. Those were the two, right?
Yep.
Can USC is going to have to figure out if Indiana's the same team next year, like how to deal with that offense. They're going to have to figure out Ohio State offense, like all of that. But when it was announced USC's going to the Big Ten, the two things that I remember most were, oh, you're going to have to deal with the Michigan run game, and you're going to have to deal with the Iowa slop fest back there. Now, I don't think anybody predicted that game would play out in LA with rain and mud and all that kind of stuff. But those were the two that I really remember of careful what you're getting yourself into because you're not ready for that, year after year if you're USC.
Yeah.
And so Lincoln Riley talks about, he's been asked a lot about the emotion at the end of that game. Oh, the team and we overcame. Come on. They absolutely wrote down what Kirk Ferentz said and talked about it the entire week. And that was the most, I think, cathartic win that Lincoln Riley has had since he's been here. Because for all the things that you said, right? Lincoln Riley's not going to go out and say that publicly. But you knew for 2 years that's been eating at him a little bit. And not that he thought about it all the time, but it was something they had to prove. And so those two games at home and where USC's put itself in the Big Ten now, right up ahead of Penn State, ahead of Michigan, like ahead of Iowa, all those, like that's where USC needed to be at the end of this year. And so you got a huge one against Oregon, but I still don't think I'm going to let that one affect like the steps that they've taken this year to put themselves where they are in the Big Ten. I still think everything they've done up until this point's been really important, and you don't flush it away if it doesn't go your way at Oregon.
Yeah.
No,
Go ahead, Greg.
I think one of the things that I found confirmating to how I see it was at the end of the game when SC obviously was pretty much going to win the game. All of a sudden, Lincoln Riley is jumping up and down and runs right up and does a jump into the arms of one of his assistant coaches, I think it was Nua. And that told me that there was a lot of, it may have been what Ferentz had said and it bothered him, but he being Riley, showed how important this Iowa game was to him and his program and the future of his program. Usually, he's a little bit more, stoic, but to see him running around like that, how badly he wanted it. And I think the players kind of must have picked up on that as well, because to see him do what he was doing in his exuberance of winning, and more power to him, was very refreshing to me, because a lot of his self-enclosed anger or intensity just came right out in front of national television. I thought it was very cool.
We're seeing a chippy Lincoln Riley these days, right? Hat turned backwards, taking shots at game day, right? I mean, he is a much more aggressive, I want to say angry Lincoln Riley. I'm not sure that's the right term, but he's got an edge to him right now that he hasn't always shown. Mark, you want to say something?
I think he's wearing his heart on his sleeve now. He gets a lot of criticism. He gets some from me, but it's not because we don't like him or don't believe he can get the job done. Here's my final thought on Iowa, because you saw his reaction after the game. I think USC was playing the type of football he's envisioned since he's been here. USC can be explosive on offense, but they can also get down in the mud, so to speak, and play that physical brand of football. And you saw that emotional outburst. Imagine if this team came out and played for 4 quarters every game. And I'm not talking about perfect football. I just mean play for 4 quarters. The last time we saw that was the Michigan game, and we saw how dominant that team was. If they play for 4 quarters, maybe this is a segue into Oregon, they have a really good chance to go on the road and beat a top 10 team despite missing some key players. Just bring the effort. Show the
Well,
effort as much as your head coach.
I'll say this. If they don't play for 4 quarters Saturday,
it's going to get ugly.
If they don't play for 4 quarters Saturday, they're going to lose by 4 touchdowns and get humiliated. This Oregon team, and look, I see you guys on the message boards. I think Oregon's overrated. I don't think they're all that good. Just shut up. If you think that, you don't understand football. This Oregon team is really good in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and they have skill talent all over the place. And they have a quarterback who's still inconsistent, but who is extremely talented. They are healthier than USC. We're talking about one of the 3 or 4 toughest venues to play in all of college football. This is a gigantic challenge. Gigantic. For USC to beat Oregon, they'll have to play the best road game they've played in 14 years since they went to Oregon and beat the top 5 Oregon team with Matt Barkley throwing the ball all over the place. That's the kind of effort it's going to take. USC is a very clear underdog and should be. And if you don't think that, it's just because you're a USC homer or you don't understand what you're watching. This Oregon team is really, really talented. And at home against a program they hate, because make no mistake, Oregon hates USC, much the same way that I hate Oregon. I mean, theirs is not as justified as mine, but Oregon hates USC. Dan Lanning hates USC. These guys are going to try to humiliate the Trojans. This is at least as big a challenge as Notre Dame, maybe bigger. It's going to take 4 quarters and then some. Okay, so let's start with this. Eric McKinney. Other than show up in the first quarter, which I think is a given, what does USC have to do to have a chance to pull a major upset and probably catapult themselves into the college football playoff?
Completely shut down the run game. That's what they would need to do, but that's not going to happen. You're not going to do that. So it's not worth discussing hold Oregon to 20 rushing yards. Oregon is going to run the ball. Now, Indiana beat them. Oregon rushed for 80 yards against Indiana. Indiana piled up sacks and tackles for loss. USC has really struggled sacks and tackles for loss of late. So in terms of what can they actually do to win, I think it's all explosive plays. It's all explosive plays. Oregon's going to get some chunk yards in the run game. They're going to. Can't go 66, right? It just can't be. It can't be momentum grabbing or changing plays on defense. If Oregon kind of feels like, right, what did Nebraska have to do to USC? What did Northwestern try to do to USC? USC has to be that defensively against Oregon, because Oregon runs. I mean, we thought King Miller ran for chunks of yards, early in the year. Oregon's got 2 guys that do that regularly. I mean, Oregon throws 3 running backs out there, and any one of them can go 12, 15, 18, 20 yards whenever they touch the ball. So that to me is it. Make them snap the ball a bunch. Make them snap the ball a bunch on offense and limit, right? Iowa's offense. First drive, 44-yard pass that sets up a touchdown. Later on, 32-yard pass wide open to a tight end, sets up a touchdown. Iowa without those 2 plays doesn't score 21 points. And so if you give Oregon those, yeah, they're gonna put up 40. They're gonna put up 50. I mean, they're gonna name their score if you let them put together chunk plays. So for me, that's it. Oregon's gonna hit some. It can't be too many. Whatever too many is, it can't be too many.
Yeah. All right, Greg. Limit chunk plays. That seems right to me. What is your key to USC? What do the Trojans have to do to have a chance of pulling a major upset?
They have to play out of their minds, but disciplined. They have to have very few penalties. They can't give Oregon the ball. I will tell you that the Oregon running backs remind me of the traditional USC tailback U running backs in the sense it's not that they just go 80 yards, in a play, but they hammer away. You can hit them and they keep moving. And you almost need two guys to make sure that you grab on to bring them down because no matter, and they're smart running backs. And you have two running backs that are averaging over 8 yards a carry. Noah Whittington is, 5 touchdowns. You have Jordan Davison. He's got 12 touchdowns. It's not really how many touchdowns they have, but when you look at the average and you think about USC's, should we say, inconsistent ability to stop the run, this is a team that, that Oregon, it fits right in what Oregon wants to do. They want to pound the ball. They've got an excellent tight end in Sadiq. They are offensively, in my opinion, tremendous. They are really tremendous. And if Moore, I know that people think of him as, well, he didn't do well at UCLA, but you know what? He's doing well enough to put them in a position. And if he has the game of his year, it could be very difficult. It's one of those games where we're going to find out against Oregon just who USC is. Look, we're happy that they beat Iowa. That was nice. But you know what? They kind of got handled by Notre Dame. And now they're going to face a team who I think is much better than Notre Dame in the ability to do the things that Oregon can do. And they have a coach that, let me tell you, there is no stop sign on him to how much he wants to beat SC. He sees it as a recruiting thing. He sees it as everything. And he doesn't want SC to be able to reestablish themselves in Los Angeles. And when you look at the good players that Oregon has, think about it. Gary Bryant may not play the wide receiver because he got hurt. We'll see how much. But he's got Pregnon, a starting guard who probably is going to be all Big Ten, who was at SC. We remember that. He's got players that, Bear Alexander, he's there. And we know if Bear Alexander plays what most people thought he would play, but he didn't do this, consistency at USC and who knows what else because we don't get to know all that much. But there's enough there that I'm looking forward to the game. I'm excited that they could win. I mean, SC, but it's really going to be a challenge. It really is going to be a challenge. And the only way, when I was back there in 2011, what really helped is when SC jumped out to a big lead against Oregon. It shut the crowd up. And I will say this, of all the places I've been, they are the worst. They are the worst. It is an animal house in there. You know what? Male, female, it's like being in a convention of really angry people. And you got to shut them up.
The crowd from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. That's who these people are.
Yep, you're
It's funny,
Just
Greg brought up Animal House. They actually filmed that movie up there. So,
except the people in Beyond Thunderdome probably read better. Mark, what's your key? What does USC have to do to have a chance?
They have to play with an attitude. And I talked about it just in the last little segment there. Play for 4 quarters. And when I say play with an attitude, have that chip on your shoulder, play angry. The fact that Dan Lanning has made Emmanuel Pignon and Bear Alexander this week's team captains, I mean, that's a shot across the bow, right? Absolutely. So Greg will remember, he actually watched these players play. I need to see some McKeever twin attitudes. So when you get somebody on the ground, a little bit extra when the ref can't see what's going on, that type of stuff. Let Oregon know, let those running backs know, hey, yeah, you know what? You might get a few yards. You're going to feel it. You're going to know I hit you. They need to bring that type of attitude. They have to be, hey, we are USC still. I get it, Oregon. You've been on a nice little mini run. You haven't done anything really of any historic, you won a Big Ten you won a Big Ten championship. You haven't really done anything else other than that. USC has to remind Oregon and their fans, you were chasing us. We're the team you're trying to be, but you can't be us. I need to see 4 quarters, and I need to see attitude. I need to see Emmanuel Pignon being pushed into the backfield, sitting on his butt as his quarterback's getting, sacked. I need to see every single one of USC's offensive linemen pancake Bear Alexander. It's that type of energy that they have to play with because there's too many young men, too many kids from Southern California that are going up north and they're saying, "Hey, this is where we should be." You need to remind everybody, no, 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 no. It's you started in LA. That's where you should be finishing your career in college is in LA playing for USC. There's no reason Jordan Davison should be having the success he's having as a freshman running back for Oregon. He should be wearing cardinal and gold. I looked at Eric in the press box and said, "Why is he playing for Oregon this year?" And I kind of got the same answer that Lincoln Riley gave us after the game. I don't know. I don't. After this game, there should be no I don't know about USC. You should know who they are and what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, all good points. Mine is the USC offensive line has to play their best game of the year. Oregon's really good up front, and they're very aggressive. And Notre Dame decided they were simply going to take away the USC run game, and so they got guys in the box. They were playing fast and they were playing downhill, and they decided to make USC one-dimensional. And they did it knowing that USC would still get some balls downfield. They did it despite the fact that they knew their defensive backs would have to be tackling guys with the ball in the air in order to stop them. And they got a whole bunch of 15-yard flags, but not enough that USC could match their points on the board. Oregon's going to do the same thing. Oregon's going to try to make USC one-dimensional. They can't be in that position because if they are, Oregon has some pass rushers. Both of their edges are really good. And if you put Jaden Mayav in a position where he's constantly in 2nd and 10, 3rd and 8 in that stadium with that noise, with that front seven, USC is going to get blown out. So the offensive line has to play better than they played all year, and they've had some good games because they have to be able to run the football. They're not going to get 250 yards rushing against Oregon, but if they can rush for 140, 150 and convert some big first downs and have a lot of 2nd and 4s, then USC can do some damage against that Oregon defense because the USC offense is good. And I think to win this game, they're going to have to score over 30, and that's only going to happen if that offensive line really plays exceptional. I think that's the key. But I'm with everybody else. USC needs to play with attitude this week. That shouldn't be hard. I mean, I don't know why it took him till halftime to read out that Kirk Ferentz quote last week, but I've got to say, if they are not ready for this Oregon team, an Oregon team that, look, we talk all the time about, the guy decided USC is not the place for him. I wish him well. When it comes to Pragnon and Bear Alexander, I do not wish them well. I do not at all. One guy who decides to quit on his team halfway through the year, and another guy who demands a big NIL deal, gets it, and then reneges on it and runs to one of our biggest rivals right away. No, there's nothing about those guys that I like. I don't wish them well. I don't hope they have long, good NFL careers. I don't. I hope they're both working at Dairy Queen for the rest of their lives. And the reality is that USC's players, if they don't understand what this game means, if they don't understand how Oregon has tried to position themselves as the premier West Coast power, and to do that, they have to put their foot on USC's neck. If they don't understand that, they should. If they don't know that Oregon is our primary rival when it comes to recruiting the guys we need from Southern California, they should know that. If they don't know that this Oregon team is looking to physically dominate them and embarrass them Saturday, they better figure it out, because that's exactly what's happening. If these guys can't show up to play from the opening kickoff in this game, they should turn in their uniforms and go somewhere else. I mean, really, that would be completely inexcusable. Before we get into predictions, I want to ask one other question. Does USC have to win this game in order for this season to be a success? Eric McKinney, why don't you start?
No. The full answer is no to be a success. Like I said before, I think you had to beat Michigan, you had to beat Iowa. Those were like the have to wins. You had to go undefeated at home. So I think in that way, this season can be seen as a success. Now you're trying to talk about, are you inching forward or are you taking a full step forward from last year? I mean, they're going to finish with more wins this year than last year against what I think is a tougher schedule than last year. They won games this year that they probably wouldn't have won last year. You're going to look at the Illinois game as that's a frustrating one, but ultimately I think whatever happens the rest of the way, no, I know UCLA is still out there, but if we're talking a win over UCLA, this season is a successful season with what USC has done. Now you can make it a really big year. You can make it a really big year if you go and win at Oregon. And I think that's what's on the line now is, are you buzzing as an off season, hey, this is a top 10 program right now for sure going into next year. And that means a lot in the offseason when you're trying to, hey, who wants to come play here? How are we going to set ourselves up? Coaches, all of that sort of thing. That means a lot. So is it over the line of being successful? Yes, already, even without a win. But the difference in how the program feels, win or loss, is significant with what happens on Saturday.
That's a pretty good answer, I think. Greg, do you agree with him?
In different areas, it depends on what your definition of success is. If they lost to Oregon, I do think this is the biggest game of Lincoln Riley's tenure because of where they're at. We're in the fourth year. You expect by the fourth year you're knocking at the national championship door. I don't think they're a national championship team as of yet. They would have to prove it. But my feeling is I think that if they beat UCLA, if they win a bowl game, they would finish with 10 wins. That is significant. If you said we finished the season 10-3 or whatever it is, you'd have to say, hey, they got 10 wins. I mean, that's if you're a longtime USC fan and you go back decades, that's the expectation. 9 wins is okay, we're coming back, but 10 wins, double digits is really, really important. I hope for Lincoln Riley's sake that they can win, which I think would be a real program. I hate to use the word Turner, but certainly would cement that they're going definitely in the right direction. I'll throw one out here, and then I know you want to move on, but I think my office, unless something really happens to change my mind, I think he's going to return next year to play. I think he still sees that he could improve. I think he sees what the team could be. The Heisman Trophy might, kind of creep into his head a little bit. So I think he's going to come back. And, if he does, that's great for USC, especially if he continues his growth. And maybe he'll say, you know what? I've gotten really much better, but I could get a lot more better with another year. So it's going to be interesting. But finished with 10 wins, that's successful to me.
Mark?
Man, is 9 wins a successful season for a regular season? I'll say yes. Is it palatable? Yes. Is it where that should be the floor though for USC. 9 wins should always be the floor of having where you say, all right, they had a good season. That should be the very worst that they can do and say, all right, well, they still had a successful season. And then you can list off the reasons why, injuries and this and that and this. That Illinois game, it just keeps creeping back because you knew all you had to do was win all 7 of your home games and then go find 3 wins on the road. And Purdue was a gimme. So now you're at 8. Everyone knew that the 2 toughest games of the year were going to be at Notre Dame, at Oregon. So for me, look, I said at the beginning of the year, this team it's a 10-2 team. Can they get there? Well, now they gotta take the hard road. They gotta make that turn on the mountain on a bus on a one-lane highway, and the back wheels are gonna hang over the edge as you swing around the bend. Yes, it's a successful season. But again, the standard is a standard for me, just like Jakeem Stewart said. I'm willing to accept 9-3, but for me, it's the cough medicine I'm willing to take because I know the team's getting better. I guess that's it for me. It's hard for me to look you straight in the eye and say, yeah, 9-3, proud of this team. I can't say that because of the way they start games. And it goes back to if they play for 4 quarters, how good could they be?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm in a similar spot. Look, USC has been a very average football team the last 2 years, and they've been an average football team that can't really compete with the best teams, especially on the road. So to go 9-3, to haul in a top recruiting class, to have maybe a big time returning quarterback and a bunch of offensive linemen coming back, and have a bunch of second and third year players that you would expect would be much better. That means the program is in a better spot than it's been in some years. So you can lose the game at Oregon and still look at things and say, I think we're moving forward. I don't think you can give up 330 rushing yards and get beat down Saturday and say that. You can lose to Oregon, and because there are lots of teams that would lose at Oregon. If you go look at the top 10, if all of the top 10 went to Autzen and played this Oregon team, most of them would lose. That's the reality, because that's a really tough place to play, and that's a good football team. So I don't know that they have to win the game to say that they had a successful year, but I think they need to be competitive. I don't think they can walk out there and just get run over and call it a successful year. No matter what happens, we're all going to regret that Illinois game. Illinois is a pretty decent team, and that's a game they never should have lost to, and the defense didn't show up to play. All game they didn't show up to play. That ain't good.
But they have
yeah, well, I know that was the excuse, but I've seen enough of this defense since then to know that unless they're eating bad chicken every Saturday, sometimes they just don't show up. So I don't know that they have to win, but they have to play like USC. And it's possible to go on the road against a good team and put in a good effort and lose. That happens. It happens to everybody. When Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State, when they go on the road against really good football teams, sometimes they lose. That happens. So you can't say that if they don't win this game, then they're failures. That's not true. But they have to play. And if they come out and they don't play, if they come out and they don't play in the first half, this first half could look like Oregon's first half against Ohio State, right? I mean, it could be bad. They have to show up and play like Trojans. They have to do that. If they do that and they lose, okay, I can live with that. But don't walk out there and get pushed around and embarrass yourself. Don't do that. You're better than that. It's time to show you're better than that. Okay, guys, it's prediction time. Mark Holken, I'm going to start with you. Give me your score. Tell me why.
Okay, this is a straight homer pick because I just cannot. I cannot.
That's why I picked you first.
Mr. Positivity, right? I got USC 34, Oregon 30. But Oregon will have the ball with a chance to score at the end, and USC's defense is going to flex and get the stop.
All right. Mark Holken with a homer pick. Greg Katz, I don't think you're going to give me a homer pick, but go ahead.
Well, I hope that Mark Holken is right.
Yep.
You too.
Yeah, right. I'm sure you do. My heart says, go SC. You can do it. My head says, Oregon is way too good. And if you don't do what we've already talked about, it's going to be rough. You want to score. You know, I could see I could see Oregon really piling it on if they get that opportunity. But I'll say, just for the sake of argument, that Oregon's going to win the game. They're 9.5 point. Last time I checked, it may have changed. 9.5 favorites. So I'm going to say it's going to be like 35 to maybe I want to say 28, but I think that Sayeri and his field goals could make a difference on the total score. So I'll say Oregon 35, USC 31. Although I think if Oregon wins, it's going to be a wider margin. That's my opinion.
Okay, Eric.
Yeah, if so I said when USC went to Notre Dame, if they played that game 10 times or 100 times, Notre Dame would win well over 50% of them. If they play this game at Autzen with the rosters probably looking the way they're going to look in terms of injuries and all of that, Oregon wins this game. I think 80 out of 100 times. Like I think Oregon, the way they play, the way they run the ball, the way they can take advantage of USC's weaknesses, everything, just about everything tips that way. But if USC plays well, I mean really well, there's that one shot, right? So I'm picking the score for that game. That game ends the same way that it did in 2011, 38-35 USC. That's the way that game ends. If USC comes out firing and doesn't get down 42 to nothing after 16 minutes, they can play with this Oregon team. This Oregon team,
There's flaws.
look, Indiana went in there and beat them, right? Indiana will get after you defensively. USC has to figure out if they want to get after somebody defensively. But this SC offense is going to be different than what Oregon's seen a lot. Right now, it looks like there's a break in the rain, right? Raining before, raining after in terms of days. Maybe they get a dry day on Saturday. There's some yards, there's some points for this USC offense, I think, to go get. Like you said, you can't come out on every single drive defensively and let them run for 75 yards just up the middle against you. Can't happen.
I'm not going to go with the homer pick. I want to. I badly want to. I want to join my brothers in homerism, but
Whatever you say next is the only part I'm going to put up on the show for everybody to watch. I'm just clipping what you say next.
Such a downer, man.
look, for you, can USC win this game? They can, right? There bigger upsets happen every week in college football than this USC team beating Oregon. So of course it can happen. But if you're asking me what's likely to happen, it seems to me that USC hasn't played a great game on the road against a really good team in, I don't know, maybe it has been 14 years. It's been a very long time. And things that don't happen for 14 years are not things that you should predict will happen Saturday. Furthermore, this is a bad matchup for USC in the sense that USC's primary weakness is that they are lousy against the run. And they are, statistically. There have been times when they played well against the run, even against good running teams. But for the most part, if you look at the numbers, the advanced metrics, USC's terrible against the run. The success rate against USC's defense running the football is very high. USC is one of the worst defenses in the nation by that metric. They're not going to stop Oregon's running game. Oregon is going to run the football and run it well. I don't think there's any doubt about that. USC's offense can score points. If their offensive line plays well, if you don't have false starts, if you don't have missed assignments, this USC offense can move the ball and score against anybody. And I think they'll score some points. I don't think it'll be enough to win. I do think USC will play hard. I think they'll equip themselves pretty well. I see it as Oregon 33, USC 21, somewhere in that neighborhood. But if they
Eric,
can get a couple,
find a new host. I'm done with this guy.
Are you going to quit on this show like you almost quit on the game Saturday, Mark?
Tell me you weren't thinking the same thing, Chris.
I wasn't going to quit the game. I was going to break my television. But look, here's the thing, though. If USC can get a couple of breaks, if they can get a fumble or two, if they can get behind Oregon's defense a couple of times early in the game, and Jacoby or Mackay can score quickly, if they can get a 14-0 lead, that's not impossible. That could happen. If USC can get a 14-0 lead at Autzen Saturday, they can win this game. I'm with Eric. I think it's about a 1 in 5 chance they do it. But look, 1 in 5 chance, those things happen, right? There are guys that hit 200 in the major leagues, and they sometimes get a hit. It could happen. I don't think it's likely to happen. It could happen. And the only thing I really want, though, the only thing we can't have, let's put it that way, is a USC team that doesn't really show up mentally and they get pushed around and embarrassed. They can't do that. They can't do that. If they do that, most of the progress we've talked about gets wiped away in one afternoon on national television.
I'm not super worried about that. I mean, the showing
I'm
up
super
early
worried. How
part,
can you not be?
the showing up early part, 100%. Lincoln Riley's teams at USC have fought and battled in every single game. So where it starts to get away is if you quit, right? If you don't show up, you get down, or you get down 21 going into halftime, and then half your team stays in the locker room. That hasn't happened. Like USC has shown up to play in every single game. When they show up is the question, right? You show up at the opening kick or the halftime kick. But I'm not going to be surprised if Oregon wins the game. I'd be surprised if USC just kind of threw in the towel and let it really, really get away from them. I think USC's better than that. But yeah, that Oregon running attack against this USC defense is trouble. It's trouble for USC.
Yeah. All right, guys. Anything we want to say before we close this out and find a new host?
There's always UCLA, right? We'll have a good topic for UCLA next week. I can assure you that.
Yeah. I mean, you still have to beat the Bruins.
Don't know what kind of mood we're in, though. You'll know what kind of mood we're in. So look forward to next week's show.
Yeah. All right. That's it. Hey, this is a big one, guys. This can take USC from second-tier program, that being the perception nationally, to a legit contender and a return to a powerful USC. You can accomplish all that in 3.5 hours Saturday if you show up and do it right. Let's hope. I'm nervous already. We'll see next week. I'll either be in a fantastic mood or I'll just be mean and grouchy. And whoever replaces me next week, I hope they bring that same attitude. All right. Until next week, fight on, everybody.